So who should win the MVP? It seems like I feel like 3 people that I think you can make a legitimate argument for at this point, with still 1 week to go. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, and Joe Burrow. The reality is, it's called the MVP award, so it should be the most valuable player that wins the award. So to me, Cooper Kupp, Jonathan Taylor, sorry, great seasons, offensive player of the year, potentially, but MVP, that's what MVP is for. It's called most valuable player. The most valuable player should win it. The most valuable player almost every time is going to be quarterback, and this time included. So that's my opinion on that. Now let's go to who should actually win the MVP between those 3 guys, right? Because most people are saying Rodgers, and there's some logic behind it for sure. I wanted to do this in a fair way because, listen, I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. That is going to factor into this data to some degree. Everyone has some sort of bias already at play, right? Even if you're not a Packers or a Buccaneers fan, you probably like Rodgers or Brady, one of them more than the other. So there is always going to be a slant no matter what. You can never get rid of that fully, but I'm going to do my best. Basically, what I wanted to do is I wanted to use numbers to figure out who should be the MVP, or just data in general. And I think the best way to do that is first talk about what stats I like and what stats I don't like, or stats I find okay. Listen, I've always kind of joked about passing yards being the dumbest stat there is, right? Who cares about passing yards? It's such a, just construct of the offense you play in. I don't care that Brady's going to have more passing yards. It means nothing to me. So first, I want to start off with stats that I'm going to call okay stats. That's how I'm going to brand this. It's going to be the stats that I like but don't necessarily love. So these are the 4 that I'm going to consider okay statistics, and also what you're going to see to the right is this is Brady, Rodgers, and Burrow, and this is where they rank in terms of those 3. So, for example, passer rating, the top, that's an okay stat, right? It gives you it gets you in the ballpark of certain players. Now, it might not be perfect, but listen, if you have a passer rating over 100, you're probably doing something well. If your passer rating 70, you're probably doing something poorly. And so just to be clear, this is not saying Brady is 3rd in passer rating, but Brady is 3rd out of these 3 players. So Rodgers is 1 and Burrow is 2. Offensive points per drive, that's another one I think is okay to look at when talking about a quarterback. Some people might say, wait a second, you're just using the entire offense to determine one player? Well, A, one player has a significant impact in that, and B, we kind of do that anyways, right? Passer rating is relatively similar to just that. It's your passing offense. So it's not entire offense, but again, I'm not saying this is something that you should strictly look at and not look at anything else. That's why it's in the okay stat category, because basically all of these stats, there's going to be one flaw, and you'll probably figure out what that is before I even tell you. But in this one, Rodgers 1 again, Brady 2 now, and Burrow 3. In yards per attempt, that one speaks for itself. Burrow is 1, Rodgers is 2, and Brady is 3. And then in EPA per play, Rodgers 1, Brady 2, and Burrow 3. The reason why I put these all in as okay stats is they're basically just better versions of the typical stats we look at, right? Instead of looking at passing yards and a touchdown to interception ratio, it kind of combines it all together and values all of them in a relatively decent way. That's what most of these stats do to some degree. Now, what they don't do is take away, how important your team around you is. That's what it doesn't do at all. For example, passer rating isn't necessarily strictly how good of a job you've done passing, right? It has other factors at play. One of those factors, of course, is the team around you. If you have someone getting open constantly and you're throwing to them who's wide open and they're getting 80-yard touchdowns, that's going to make your passer rating go up even if you're not actually doing that much work. The other way it has its flaw is that obviously if you throw a perfect pass and remember like when Joe Burrow threw a perfect pass to Jamar Chase dropped it and it ended up getting intercepted. Like that was a great throw from Burrow, but it hurts his passer rating because it's only results based. And same thing with EPA per play. It's the exact same thing. Like that great throw from Burrow ended up hurting his EPA per play. So again, these aren't bad stats. I don't think you shouldn't look at them, but there are some potential issues here. Let's look at some, and the branding for this is going to be by snap good stats. So this is on a per snap basis. What is, how good of a stat is it? So to me, this is a lot better. And one thing I want to talk about right off the top is the adjusted completion percentage, because that's actually another stat that in a vacuum, I'm not really a crazy fan of. Like, let's go over to this board where I'll kind of explain why I'm not a huge fan of this, even though this is still going to kind of It's not going to change too much, but it will change a little bit. Basically, my point is, so this is adjusted completion percentage for how far you're throwing down the field. Again, I know it's a lot to keep track of. Try to let me just explain it for a second. But basically, what adjusted completion percentage is people at PFF look at each throw you make and kind of say, hey, on that pass where Jamar Chase dropped it and it was intercepted, we're now counting that as a completion. Pretty simple, but it is a little bit better than completion percentage. And if you do something like this, where you can then calculate, okay, where did you rank in each one of these distances? So for example, the first row, that's 20 plus yards down the field. Brady was 4th best in adjusted completion percentage that far down the field. Rodgers 18th best and Burrow 11th best. And then you go one row over, you have 18th best, 10th best, and just best for Joe Burrow, and so on and so forth. AVE, that's the real one I want you to look at. That's the average average rank of where you ranked in adjusted completion percentage. To me, this is notable because, again, you look at their actual adjusted completion percentage. Brady's is the lowest, whereas Burrow's the highest, and Rodgers is the second best. Brady's 15th in adjusted completion percentage, and Rodgers is 7th. But if you actually factor in where you rank in terms of how far you're throwing down the field, Brady's done a better job at completing the passes he should complete than Rodgers has. It's just that Rodgers has, thrown more screen passes, essentially. I know that's long and convoluted, but listen, this is me we're talking about, all right? I get very much into this stuff. All right, back here we go. So I know that was a bit complex, but we're back. What's going to happen here is, so again, adjusted completion percentage, Burrow is 1. If you do the way I do it, that's why there's an asterisk there. Brady is 2, and Rodgers is 3. If you want to put Rodgers at 2 and Brady at 3 and just do it normal, you could do that if you want to. PFF grade, Burrow is 1, Brady is 2, Rodgers is 3. Turnover-worthy play percentage. Brady is 1 here, and people are going to say, wait a second, doesn't he have like 14 interceptions? Yeah, but he's gotten very unlucky with those turnovers. He's actually done a pretty good job of not turning the ball over this season. It's just the reality is, you throw the ball more, you're going to turn the ball over more, and he's had a few fluky interceptions. That's happened. And finally, big-time throw percentage. Rodgers is 1 here, Burrow is 2 here, and Brady is 3 here. So you look at these all combined, and it actually kind of leans towards Burrow a little bit, right? I think Burrow's efficiency numbers are actually even better than Rodgers is. One more chart I want to talk about here is good cumulative stats. So these are interesting, and one thing I want to mention right off the top is the one you see at the bottom. That's not really great, but I just threw it in there, so I would put an asterisk on that. But anyways, basically what these are is, this is kind of back to my original point, right? Which is, I think looking at the last panel, you could say, hey, the numbers show Joe Burrow is the best quarterback, but the award is not best quarterback. The award is most valuable player, and getting more passing attempts is more value. That's just the reality of the situation. At least that's my opinion on it. I mean, we see this argument in baseball come up a lot, where one pitcher has done a really good job. He's performed better, but in less innings, whereas another pitcher has gotten more innings. He added more value that way. So what do you define MVP as? To me, I define MVP as most valuable player. That's simple. So in this, WAR, in my opinion, is the best stat you can look at. I think that's number one for determining value. What WAR is it's another Pro Football Focus stat. I know people hate PFF stats, but listen, people say, oh, I hate numbers, I want to watch film. That's what PFF stats are. Like, if you don't like PFF numbers and you like box score stats, or even like EPA per play is much more of a box score stat than PFF grades are. It is. But anyways, this isn't even a grade. It's basically just graders from PFF go back and essentially say, okay, would a replacement level player have made each of these plays that you did? And if the answer is yes, then everything stays the same. If the answer is no, then they adjust to what the replacement level player would have done. And Brady's WAR is way higher than, like, Rodgers is at 3, Brady's at 4.7, Burrow's at like 4. So that's a huge jump, which to me kind of goes to show, a lot of it is just he's gotten more attempts. And maybe you could argue even some of the expected stuff for him to do, he's had to do more in his offense. I think all of that is very true. I mean, there's no denying Brady's, been a bigger part of the Buccaneers offense than Rodgers and Burrow have been of their offenses. If you look at bulk turnover-worthy plays, now Rodgers is in first because he threw the ball less than Brady, so it does go both ways there. Also, big-time throws. You see Brady is 1 there, whereas Rodgers and Burrow are tied for what they have. They have the same amount of big time throws, so I put 2.5 for each of those because that's where they're at. and then total EPA added. Again, it's still fluky because it does go to show with this one where you're playing and what team you're on does matter. And so because of that, that factors in, which is why like Mahomes is actually ahead of all these guys, but I don't think anyone thinks he should be MVP. So don't love it, but I wanted a fourth stat there, so I included it. So all right, let's look at the table here. I think this is, to me, this kind of is fascinating because each of these guys ended up leading in one of those tables. What you're looking at now is I had all three of those tables I just showed you, the ones of the by snap good stats, the okay stats, and the good cumulative stats. And I'm just looking at where each player on average placed in each of these things. So the by snap good stats, the one at the top, you see Brady on average ranked a 2, Rodgers a 2.25, and Burrow a 1.75. So again, this part isn't really scientific, just kind of a fun way to demonstrate my point. So I think by this logic, you could argue, hey, on a per snap basis, Burrow has been the best quarterback in football. I think that's fair. I might agree with that. In fact, I do agree with that. You look at the okay stats, and these stats tend to be what really rules who wins MVP typically. And you look at Brady, he hasn't done as well at the okay stats. Rodgers has been amazing at these okay stats, and Burrow also hasn't done as well at the okay stats. So that's why Rodgers is probably going to win MVP, is because these are stats that, again, like they're not bad stats to look at. Like passer rating isn't a bad stat to look at. But there are better numbers to use. People just, I think, don't, quite frankly, there's a learning curve. Like I imagine a good chunk of you have already clicked this video off and aren't even listening to me talk right now because you got confused when I was trying to explain what I was doing with the adjusted completion percentage table. Like, I get it. It's a little confusing and people don't really pay that much attention to it, which I can understand. But you look at the good cumulative stats, and Brady does basically as good as Rodgers did, same number with that. Again, don't love the total EPA because really where Brady was best was, most WAR, best big time throws, and, second best turnover worthy plays out of these three guys. To me, that's enough to say, like, yeah, I'll probably give it to Tom Brady. I think that's fair for me. If I had an MVP vote, I would vote for Tom Brady, even though I think like 3 days ago I said Rodgers. Looking at these numbers, I have changed my opinion on it. And I think that just thinking about it more and spending kind of a day to think about it, I'd say Brady deserves it. And I think that if there was a best quarterback award, I would give it to Joe Burrow. One last chart, because I wanted to bring this up. One thing that drives me absolutely nuts is the amount of people saying all Brady does is throw up jump balls to Rob Gronkowski and Mike Evans. Like, you're just not watching Buccaneers games if that's what you think. It's just not true. And I want to use PFF grades again. Oh my God, PFF. Listen, PFF grades are pretty good. They're not perfect. They're pretty good. This is just, I'm trying to measure the supporting cast of these guys. So first, I have pass blocking. Where do you rank in terms of pass blocking? And there's no doubt that, and again, this isn't the individual player, obviously. This is where does the team rank in terms of these categories. So pass blocking, Brady is, the Buccaneers are second best in pass blocking. Rodgers is currently 8th, and then Burrow is, Bengals are 25th. So I think a lot of people value pass blocking more than anything. I am not in that camp. I don't think that that's necessarily true. I think receivers matter more than pass blocking, and there's data to suggest that. And even if, you are not a believer in that, then really the award should go to Joe Burrow, right? Because his pass blocking has been horrendous. If you believe pass blocking is more important than receiving, which you can do, I think both are strong arguments. But if you believe that pass blocking matters more, then Joe Burrow should be the runaway MVP. If pass blocking is what matters, and he's putting up these kind of numbers with the 25th best pass blocking grade for his offensive line, he should be runaway MVP. The receiving is what matters more, and it's especially what matters more when we're talking about these stats, because of course we're not factoring in sacks into the equation for most of these stats, I would say. Brady's receivers have been significantly worse than Rodgers and Burrow, and people are going to be surprised by that, but keep in mind, the Buccaneers have been injured, and also, it's not necessarily about name brand. Mike Evans hasn't had a great season, and trust me, if you think I'm being biased saying that, you clearly don't know me, because Mike Evans is probably my favorite player in football, but he hasn't had his best season. There's no denying that. So, Mike Evans has a much better name brand than Allen Lazard, so people are going to say, well, clearly the Buccaneers are doing way better. And listen, I'd rather have Mike Evans than Allen Lazard, but the difference isn't necessarily as big as you might think. At the end of the day, they've all been good. They're all, two of them are top 5, and one of them is nearly top 10. So that's all good. But the idea that, Brady gets the benefit of his supporting cast, Brady has the worst supporting cast out of these three guys, according to the data that I look at. Look, if you look at points added from offensive supporting cast, a bit of a mouthful, but what this is, and this is points per game added from the offensive supporting cast, this is using the same thing I do for my analytical power ranking stuff. You see that Brady's offense generates him a little under 10 points per game. Rodgers gets him over 16 points per game. Burrow around 11.5 points per game. And if you remove the one below, is you just minus halfbacks. So removing the halfbacks from the equation, which maybe you think that that's fair, get rid of the the running defense running offense as a whole, you still see that Brady's is still significantly lower. So if your argument is that Brady is only good because of his supporting cast, I mean, you can make that argument, I suppose. I just don't get it. I think there's a few things that are really in Rodgers' favor and why he's getting so much more buzz than Burrow and Brady. I think one of those things is Rodgers has unequivocally been the best quarterback in football for the past 9 weeks. There's no doubt about it. If we're just talking second half MVPs, it's Aaron Rodgers. Write your name on it and just put it in the envelope. He should get all 50 votes. Even the guy who thinks he's a jerk will vote for him if it's just the second half, because I think that that's fair. I do think that Tom Brady, again, if we're talking just strictly who's added the most value of the 2021 season, it's hard to argue against the numbers that Brady has. And if that's how you view an MVP award, then I think that that's how you should vote. And if that's not how you view the MVP award and you think it should just be, the best quarterback, well, then my question would be, well, why isn't it just the best player? Why doesn't Justin Tucker win it every year then? If it's the most valuable player, that's why we say it has to be a quarterback. And if it has to be a quarterback, the reason for it is because they add the most value. Tom Brady has added the most value because of how much more pass attempts he's had, among other things. He's been very good as well. So that's kind of my logic. It's not necessarily that Brady's been better than Rodgers or Burrow, but he's played more basically and had to be a bigger part of the offense. That's my mindset on it. So hope this made sense. Hope you guys learned something. If you made it to the end of this video, God bless you. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Definitely let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.